person who took the banner advertising this event with my face on it and set it on fire on this campus, you shut down the conversation. Do you think that was okay? Do you think it's okay to set banners on fire?
I think people can do whatever the fuck they want to do.
So there's no moral right or wrong?
I think people can do whatever the fuck they want to do. They can have an abortion, they can fuck 5 people in the night, they can come and listen to your speech, and they can still have questions for you.
And you can set banners on fire? And
People can do whatever the fuck they want to do.
So do you believe that there's moral right and wrong?
I can say it one more time for the people outside. I can do whatever the fuck they want to do.
So she doesn't believe in right or wrong. That's actually a very scary society because there are rights and there are wrongs. And you can't be like, I can do whatever the fuck I want to do, because that's actually a very, very scary situation. Because if I wanted to go out and murder people or commit an act of genocide, I shouldn't have the right to do whatever the fuck I want to do. Next question.
So what you just saw there was modern era personified, and the living example of the sad, actually, fact that there's no limit to how low you can be as a person, and by defect as a society, which means that in this uncertain possibility in the future in which we actually survive this modern era, we take down all the corruption that's happening everywhere, all the corrosion in the collective mind, and we just look back, as it tends to happen when bad things are left in the past, and later generations are like, wow, that wasn't that bad, it's whatever. No, we actually have a ton of information to look back and behold the shit show. The human mind is very malleable. It's the beauty and its curse. It can be fractured and disrupted and broken and torn apart and re-glued together to almost an infinite possibility, just like clay. And it can be corroded to limits that would have been unimaginable to people who have not yet experienced it or seen it. Well, anyways, with all that said, let's get to the subject.
Fucking bitch! Fucking bitch! Mom is a bitch! Mom is a bitch! Mom is a bitch! Ice cream so good. That was good. Coconut. Fire. Ice cream so good. Yes, yes, yes. Gang, gang. Yes, strong woman. Yes.
So, what makes somebody end up like this? Well, to start, us people, as mammals that we are not born with every bit of information that we're gonna need ever in our lives, like bugs or reptiles or animals like that. We're more complex than that. We need learning and examples, trial and error. Our conscience is both a collective of elements that stem from ourselves, our heads, but also floating around in this ether like cloud that forms a collective knowledge, and we build it and make it more and more complex and nuanced, and we need to sustain it with practice and past experiences and symbols and ideas and recordings and or all of that sort. It's a very delicate system, very effective but very fragile. Its effectivity depends on us as everybody taking certain things for granted, to not dwell on those things too much over and over and over again. Otherwise we will never advance. You might call them commandments or just whatever. It's all these notions that we can all agree have already been proven to be the most effective, the better things, right? The better notions that are very obviously the most effective to keep us both alive and going forward. The kind of things that make you say, yeah, no shit. It's pretty much impossible to deny those things or do mental gymnastics around it in order to make it work for society in general, because there are usually things that resonate very well with nature alongside ourselves in this cycle of as it is below, it is above, and they kind of work well because nature works like that too. And yeah, Okay, going off rail here for a second. I have this notion of you can always be unbiased, like the most unbiased as possible, even though we are kind of designed to be biased, but you can break that in because you can find non-biases as long as you remove yourself from the equation of the subject, which is something that I should explain later on in some other video. I have actually, but I should keep explaining more. But anyways, the truth in everything is always hiding somewhere. People say that there's no right and wrong, that there's no this and that there's blah 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 blah. It's a way to think. Sure, I used to be like that when I was younger. But no, that is usually just a way to justify you doing wrong things. Let's just call it that, wrong things. And it's just kind of a lousy way to justify yourself when you're doing wrong. It's the loser's way to say, no, it's not that I'm wrong, it's just that the truth doesn't exist. No, sorry. Not sorry. The truth is always there somewhere. It's the easiest thing to defend because you can't really argue against it because you don't even need to find it. It's right there. It's always right there. You just have to learn to see it and to admit it more than finding it. And once you do that, defending it, arguing in its favor, it's the easiest thing because you don't really have to do anything. It defends itself, no matter the angle, no matter the ideology, no matter whatever. It's always there. And to argue against it, you have to mind juggle a lot and do all these convoluted things that end up falling apart. And that's one of very effective way to know that you are wrong when you have to make all this effort and all this narrative. And anyways, like in that example from the NPC that I just showed, there is a truth there. There is right, there is wrong. You can't do everything the fuck you want, no matter how you see it, no matter what kind of nihilistic point of view you want to have, like I used to when I was younger. I was very nihilistic. Anyways, by the way, don't get me wrong, nowadays I don't have moral biases at all, but that's another subject. There is a truth there, a very basic truth that is ingrained in us and makes us move forward. It's a no shit kind of thing, like, yeah, duh. And yet, you find people like this sending us backward. You can't just do whatever the fuck you want because nothing in the universe works like that. There's always a reason for a cause and there's always a cause for a reason. Nothing is free and nothing is meaningless. It's wish fulfillment to think that it should be some other way and things should just work the way you want them because you want them, but that's not gonna happen. If things were like that, simply everything would fall apart, and that's it. Applying it as us as people, yeah, sure. That would mean that, for example, if somebody sees people that they like, they could just like abuse them sexually, assault them because that they want that. They feel like it. If you want to kill somebody, you do it. If you wanna, you get it. It's literally mentally challenged to think otherwise. And yet, the narrative of this current culture dictates that there is no common ground and that there is no fact outside of the fact that you wish you could have. And that is very malicious and dangerous. And there's a reason for that. It's not just something that happened out of the blue for no reason at all. There's a reason for that. As I said, nothing is for free or meaningless anywhere. It's both a fabrication for an end goal and almost a necessity, but a very forced necessity that didn't need it to be there and doesn't need to be there. And we are going to be way better without, but more on that later.
Get out of my car! Ow! God damn you. I'm gonna call the cops now.
No, because you hit me!
Get the hell out of my car!
You hit me!
So, going back to my previous question, what makes somebody like this girl here have this sort of lolcow aesthetic to her? This lolcow sensitivity, this very modern thing. It's not a modern phenomenon. It's been with us, for instance, since forever, but still, it's very contemporary as a plague on its own. All these people that are the current problem are very easily identifiable because they pretty much fall into the mythical realm of the lolcows. If you put two and two together, lolcows, what everybody knows is lolcows, and all these other type of people that you see, all these characters that you see in the world sitcom, this type of people exist everywhere in politics, in schools, in everywhere. What separates a common peasant lolcow from somebody that is not typically considered a lolcow, it's basically its status, its social status. The fact that lolcows are just like by themselves, dwelling in their basements and in their attics. I'm just gonna use attics, and in their corners alone, without actual way to protect themselves online, to cover up themselves and cloud themselves in this social bubble that helps them go out and say, I'm not a lolcow. That's pretty much it. A common lolcow is this victim on unhinged enabling that did not find a social bubble in which to justify its behavior in order to disguise it as an ideology. I don't know if I was able to explain myself properly, but I'm going to show some examples. Meet Phoebe Plummer, somebody who, after learning a lot about this movement she is a part of and knowing the kind of people that are involved in this whole organization, it makes me realize that all of them fall into this category of lolcow, but she's pretty much one of the main. She's the Greta, I forgot her last name, yeah, but that one. Greta Thunberg, yeah, that one. She's one of the faces of these movements, and she's one of the strongest zealots, you might say. So that is why I decided to focus on her. You can see why soon enough. She is the perfect soldier, the dream gear for all of these very brainwashy, cultish movements that have never ceased to exist up until this point. And, well, people like this have a lot of things in common. They embarrass themselves without even noticing it. They think they're in the right when in reality they are spreading a lot of toxic and dislikable ideas. And also they are filled with vanity and self-righteousness. For whatever reason, because they're always wrong and misguided, but vanity mixed with ignorance is perfect combination for this type of people. Look, yeah, let's watch.
So I know you don't agree with me. How do you square the circle that people want to be more prosperous, they want to lead comfortable lives, but you're saying it's absolutely urgent we stop emissions now? How do you make the two work?
I wonder why you think it's incompatible to help people with the cost of living crisis and to switch to renewables, which are 9 times cheaper than fossil fuels. Can you name me one of your viewers who is suffering the consequences of the cost of living crisis, who doesn't want their energy bills to be 9 times cheaper right now?
Well, unfortunately, that's not what's happening, because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, and you need to have fossil fuel backup to make up the gap. About half our energy every day is still coming from natural gas. Where's that going to come from?
Well, why aren't we implementing renewable technology? The largest solar farm in the UK was built in 6 weeks.
But it's not
it takes up to 28 years for any oil to come out of the ground in the North Sea.
But it's not going to produce any energy at night. That's the problem with renewables, is that they don't provide the base load that you need.
We already have the capacity to provide so much of our energy from renewables without any technology needed for storage solutions.
But where is this coming from? Because when the wind doesn't blow, when we had really cold days, we were reliant on importing from the EU, on coal and on gas. How are we going to replace that in the short term?
Quite frankly, I'm not a scientist.
First of all, it's very easy to believe that renewable energy is the magical solution for everything and it works in every single case, but I used to sort of fall into that belief, but I started to dig in a little bit, and I realized that it's not the case. It's very easy to believe in flashy buzzwords like that when you're not informed about anything. Like her. She is vehemently arguing for this very tired and disproven affirmation of just change to solar energy and wind energy. Stop using pesticide and go organic, which sounds nice, but it would only work if we were living in small circles, small social circles like little towns, which would be kind of ideal, but it's not the way things are working right now. It's not practical, applicable, realistic solutions for the problems that we have. It's only narrative. And coming from somebody dressed in this expensive clothes and her dyed hair that required several gallons of water that is polluted now, it's just very hypocrite. It's very ignorant and childish. What this guy explains to her, this man called Jacob Rees-Mogg, very Star Warsy name, Rees-Mogg, sounds like a Jedi name. It's saying something that a lot of people with a little bit of common sense and a little bit of information about this whole subject also follows, is that you can't really apply any of those quote-unquote solutions right now. It requires time, in order to produce the applicable technology in order to substitute things like oil and pesticides and things like that. It would take generations for that, and the technology that we have right now, sadly, is the thing that is the best solutions to the problems that we have, like for example hunger, supply of energy, especially in countries like really extremely hot or extremely cold places where you need electricity.
How many more experts need to say it?
Because we can't do it tomorrow. What are we going to do in terms of transport? That we still need petrol for cars and we need diesel for lorries. How are we going to get goods into supermarkets without this?
Quite frankly, I'm not a scientist. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the world, and we're living the effects of the climate crisis today. Right now, people are dying. Children are starving. Families are fleeing their homes.
But energy...
And it's preventable. We have the solutions.
Cheap energy is one of the things that has hugely extended life expectancy by the ability to control temperatures, whether this is by air conditioning or by heating, the ability to store food more effectively, the ability to transport food, and indeed use fertilizers to grow more food, has all been essential in increasing life expectancy. Taking all that away would be disastrous for life expectancy.
Do you know what's essential in keeping our food supply, tackling the climate crisis? This year we lost a third of our wheat crops, half of our potato crops, and it's only going to get worse. We're heading to a future where people are going to be fighting over the last loaves of bread at Lidl.
But the only way we get our wheat crop is by putting the fertilizers on that come from fossil fuels. How are we going to replace that? That the productivity of organic farming is so much lower than of modern farming methods. We cannot feed the world on organic farming, and you must know that.
How do you expect to feed the world when our crops are destroyed by droughts, floods, wildfires, storms?
That's a really common trait of these kind of people, is that whenever they find themselves losing an argument because they didn't really thought it through too much, and they don't know how to get the upper hand because they can't afford to lose. They don't want to lose. They don't want to admit that they were wrong. So what they do is look for anything that they can hit, anything that they can cling to. And when nothing else works, they go for emotional manipulation. One thing that makes you fall for this level of mental disruption is the incapacity to think critically, which makes you inevitably fall into only developing your emotional thought. One thing every lolcow shares, no matter who it is that they always rely almost solely on emotional thinking. Emotional thinking is a good thing, but you can't just depend on that. You need to balance both sides of the cognitive spectrum, like in this example.
That this is a proportionate act to a criminal government. The government's inaction is criminal. I'm not a criminal. I'm a scared little kid trying to fight for their future.
No, you're not. You're not just a scared little kid. You're an adult. You see it here, twisting narrative in order to try to emotionally manipulate somebody, people watching, in order for them to sympathize with her and agree with her instead of being responsible for the things that you have done. For example, vandalizing in the name of an organization that is funded by the oil companies that you're supposed to be fighting, but those oil companies, those investors, have invested money in the renewable energy too.
Who funds you guys?
Just donations from the public.
Yeah. Right. Do you know that Just Stop Oil has taken massive donations from, oil dynasties such as Jean-Paul Getty? Do you know that? Sorry?
No, it's massive.
No, it has. Do you want me to show you?
No, we're not.
You are. I've just told you. You're funded by the Climate Emergency Fund in LA, of which the majority of them are heirs to oil dynasties, including Jean-Paul Getty.
I'll have a sensible debate about climate science and the climate crisis and the just energy transition, but there's no point if you're just going to throw mud that doesn't make any sense.
I'm telling you facts. How's that mud? Look, this is your favourite newspaper, The Guardian. Just Stop Oil's spring uprising protest funded by US philanthropists. LA-based Climate Emergency Fund donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to activists. They include Jean-Paul Getty, whose oil dynasty made him a multi-billionaire.
Investors are not going to put all their eggs in one basket. That's like in the movies. It doesn't work like that. If they can control everything, they will. And if they can control the competition, they will. It's sad to admit that the world is that rotten, and it makes you feel a little bit hopeless, but you have to do it in order to be able to do something about it. Something real, not just annoying normies in the street to no end and making people detest you, which harms social justice movements like this to a point where it's associated with negativity to say social justice, even though it shouldn't be like that. I wonder why they don't protest against companies that produce disposable technology that is designed to be perishable, and not only perishable but also designed in a way that the more generations of technology that go on, the more difficult it is to repair them. Most of it is more quote-unquote practical, it's cheaper and it's faster to simply replace than to repair like old technology. In order for you to keep consuming, which keeps this constant, endless influx of disposing, creating more contamination. I wonder why these activists don't rise against companies like Apple and Tesla, for example, that for the most part design technology like that with that idea. That would mean more. By doing that, they would be exposing these companies that are actively manipulating people to believe misguided and misinformed ideas and contaminating in unnecessary ways. I wonder why they don't go and rise against those cool clothing companies that they like so much, or those hair dye companies that they use so much. Those companies can be argued to be even worse because they're not being upfront about the damage that they're causing. And in a lot of occasions, they are companies that are trying to make you believe that they're saving the world, while in reality they are not. And sometimes they're even contributed to contaminate even more. Oh yeah, but those are things that they actually like. If you want to be an activist that cares about people, why don't you protest against Black Lives Matter, an organization whose owners utilize the funds of the donors to live in luxury while they utilize manipulated people in order to be their pawns and go out and put themselves in danger. And that's not even mentioning the brainwashing, the spread of misinformation and emotional manipulation that they endorse, and the damage that they cause to the people, innocent people that they attack and they lash out against. Oh yeah, right, because they're cowards. I mean, I can't believe nowadays, now that I'm this age, I usually see conversations like this, and I end up agreeing with the suits in the scene. But that's just what happens when you put your vanity aside and your self-righteousness aside, and you remove yourself from the subject, and you just look at things the way they are, and you just see both sides, and you just acknowledge, and you listen, and you accept facts, and that's it. Magically, everything starts flowing by itself, and it's beautiful. By the way, it's not agreeing with the suits in a conversation, it's agreeing with the person who has actual information, and people who are arguing in favor of the truth. A lot of times it tends to be educated people, and a lot of times educated people tend to have a position where they dress up like snobs, like these people. Years ago, I used to be physically allergic to people that looked like snobby squares like this, until I realized that I was being childish and that I needed to put my vanity aside. But if you are somebody whose entire livelihood revolves about something that is destructive in some way to society, and you don't want anybody rising up against that and doing something about it, a very viable solution for you is to infiltrate that very same movement and ruin it in order to demonize it. Like, for example, everything about what people call the woke movement nowadays. It's based on positive ideas, but implemented in the worst possible way, to a point where it's detested by everybody with a little bit of common sense. And you might say, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would you invest so much in something that it's going to fail? Yeah, but at the same time, if you have so much resources, you can invest in destroying your competition. The payback for that is most likely going to be worth it. And yeah, this man right here can explain it way better than me. He's probably smarter than me. He's at least more educated than me, way more. So I suggest you better just watch the whole interview. It's like 10 minutes long. But these people, like in this movement in particular, they always talk about climate change and how it's warmer, it's colder, and whatever, and like how natural disasters kill a lot of people, while in reality that is just nature working, and that is just like how the cycles of nature are always changing, and a lot of times things just become warmer and colder, and hurricanes and stuff like that are never going to disappear. And activists like this mix both things together in order to alarm you and try to make you sympathize with them and their movement, while in reality man-made disasters and natural disasters are two completely different things. He is infinitely more articulate than me. You can notice it. That's one of my main flaws, and that's something that actually harms my videos, is that I am just right now learning how to be more articulate. I'm trying, okay, I'm trying. What can I do? I have a speech impediment. I low-key use my videos in order to force myself into improving them.
What do you mean it's not true? Have you spoken to an ordinary person who is suffering the cost of living crisis right now?
I don't believe there's any such thing as ordinary people. I believe everybody is in their individual way quite remarkable. I think ordinary people is the most condescending way of referring to our fellow British citizens.
Well, of course you don't relate to the ordinary people. You're a millionaire.
The figures, my personal circumstances, are nothing to do with whether we impoverish people by making energy prices higher. And you want to make them higher, and I don't. But what I'd say to you finally is, why don't you stand for election? Why do you think it is right to throw soup over a picture rather than standing election and seeing if you can get people to vote for your view of the world?
You're an educated man, Jacob. You know that this is how successful movements of social change happen. They must cause disruption. And Antonio Gutierrez, he's the Secretary General of the United Nations. He has said that we are on a highway to climate hell. He has said that licensing new fossil fuels is economic and moral madness. The Secretary General of the United Nations is calling for an end to all new fossil fuels. What makes you think that I have time to get into power and make these changes?
So you want to be a dictator? You don't want voters to decide?
That's
you want
absolutely
to tell
not
them.
what I said, and you know
Why don't
that.
you stand for election? Put yourself forward and see if people want your way.
Because we don't have time. Because if I want to have a future, if I want to have a future where I can feed myself, where I can love my family,
we're not going to feed them. We're not going to feed them without fossil fuels, which are the essential fertilizers.
One little thing that I just noticed right now, because I'm editing the video, and while doing that, I need to watch it over and over again. Most kind of activists that you see in media, and her is the perfect example. Notice what she's doing. She's really well trained and rehearsed in her dialogue. She doesn't sound natural. Her pauses, her end to every sentence, her lexicon, the points she makes. She talks about under this current administration. Ecology doesn't have to do with administrations. Sure, you can argue if you're a politician that you're gonna do something about the climate problem, the ecological problem. But that's a political campaign. You can say everything you want, but only actions speak for themselves. And none of the people that she's trying to argue for do anything meaningful about it. It's very funny the things that she says about caring for your family and children and all these kind of things in the future, right? Well, these kind of people like her are the people that care less about those things.
Alright, this is not human. Shut the
I actually detest things like that.
Yeah. Honestly, what?
That's normie type of shit, and they hate that.
Should we love our neighbors?
No.
No, we shouldn't.
Liberal extremist talking about defending conservative points. That's low right there. That shows how low you can go in order to attempt to look virtuous, and how senseless you are. Irrational too. Think about the children. Like, are you kidding me? People like you push things. I'm not gonna go into that because I divert too much already, and I notice that, and I'm trying to fix that about myself. Look at the mental disruption that is being force-fed to children all over the world now, in schools and in media. Intellectual disruptions and incapacity of critical thought, which is extremely detrimental, pushed by people like you, and then you say, oh, think about your children. Oh my god. She's not making more direct, meaningful points like the malpractices that people have, like a lot of people have, like, for example, not recycling, even though recycling has been proven to be kind of useless. Like, you don't really recycle when you think you recycle. That's another point. Buying too much things from online, especially from like Amazon and things like companies like this that promote compulsive, dismeasured consumerism. That makes brands have to produce more, which is polluting more. As far as I can tell, this is a personal point that I've just thought for some time now. Buying too much online pollutes, because you're creating a lot of traffic that wasn't there before, with airplanes, ships, vehicles, from those delivery services like Uber and Didi and you name it. This is a personal point. I imagine it pollutes more because it's demanding more traffic and also an increased production of everything. But in that I can be wrong. I can be easily wrong. I don't know. But yeah, I just noticed her dialogue sounds politically based. Her phrasing, her words, the points she makes, she sounds like she's really well rehearsed. Her facial expressions, everything, it doesn't sync up with what you see. She sounds like this supposedly average girl, right? This Ramona Flowers. Acapulco, stop scratching yourself. In every video you hear noise in the background, and it's my dog scratching. There's things outside. I think you can hear a plane right now. The neighbors. She's not making points that would make you believe she actually knows about ecology and the things that she's arguing for. She talks like a politician. She's making political statements. And she sounds the way politicians sound like. She sounds the way a politician trying to sound like a normal, scared little girl would sound like. And that the problem is that every single social movement in current times is filled with almost solely of people like this. I focus on her again because she's one of those more viral personalities when it comes to activism in general. Aggressive, close-minded, sheepish people who think very highly of themselves, expose themselves to the world doing reproachable, detestable things. You call them out and you try to have a civilized argument with them, and they lash out and they cry and scream and become aggressive and freak out. Lolcows. Is that if you keep following the trails of these kind of people throughout everything that they do all the time, you would find that they share the same traits as lolcows, and you find endless sorts of bemusement and just morbid entertainment. The thing is, a lot of it is not very entertaining because it's very scary, because these people that actually have a lot to say in what happens and impacts your life. So yeah. Well, and speaking of all these people that I call lolcow, even though they're very different, seemingly, in that train of thought, you might be asking, what do those people have in common? What makes somebody like that be that way? And I have noticed by watching a lot and watching, every single time I watch videos about people like that just interacting, I notice that they have mainly two things in common: immaturity and delusion. Even these big shot people who attempt to act all adult, and they try to give this image of themselves of like serious, mature people, they actually are not. They are quite the opposite. Immaturity is the incapacity to process situations in life, challenges and facts and scenarios in a cohesive, stable, critical manner. And delusion is the inability to process reality, your reality, to process facts, to process truthful manners in a cohesive, critical, balanced manner. Basically just be able to accept things. Just deal with it. Suck it up. That is why those two things go hand to hand with each other. Usually immature people are very delusional, and delusional people are delusional because they're not mature enough. Very curious that current agendas tend to program people into being very childish, very kiddie, very immature, tend to infantilize adults and to promote delusional behaviors and feeding people these ideas of not accepting things as they are and making up their own reality as they want it. But that's another can of worms. More people like this just spawn out of everywhere more than ever, to an extent where they become entire social movements. It's very malicious and misleading and vile and just rotten, but that's another story. The question is, where does this behavior start to appear and happen? And like most of the things in our life is when in early childhood. Bad parenting pretty much is as simple as that. Lousy parenting promoted by current times as they are, where they basically promote lousy parenting. But it's not just media or just like some kind of system. You can't just blame media or the system or whatever for your fucking lousy parenting or your bad examples. But I mean, personal mediocrity has a lot to do with it, and there's people who are just like that. You can change that, and the important thing is to notice it. There's a lot of people out there who carry all this baggage of toxicity from society and personal past experiences, and there's a lot to dig in there. But they pass it to their kids, willing or unwillingly, but they do. It's not cool, man. it's just that's why we can't have nice things pretty much. That's why we are the way we are right now. When you're a child growing up, well, you don't know any better, right? You're just a fucking kid. You're just a dumbass kid. So you act very instinctively. You are by defect very selfish. You need to be selfish. It's instinctive to be selfish as kids because you're growing up and you can't fend for yourself. You can't provide for yourself because, again, you're just some dumbass kid who doesn't know any better, doesn't know anything. So you need to force people, the grown-ups, your parents, the people guarding you, to do things for you, to provide for you. So you need to manipulate them and force them into your will, into your own interest. You see already where I'm going with this? It's actually very important to survive when you're a little ass kid. You learn these behaviors of like doing a tantrum, crying, and doing things like that in order to make your parents feel concerned and instinctively provide for you and defend you. So yeah, it's useful in the first years of your life. And the job of the parents is at first to provide for you and comply with those selfish actions that you do. But it's then when you're growing up, it's their job to start teaching you that those things are not needed anymore because you're growing up already. You're supposed to be learning how to fend for yourself now and to grow up, to be self-fulfilling and self-serving. So they need to start guiding you into these things that I was talking about earlier. All these guidances that we have constructed over centuries and centuries and generations of trial and error, proven to be the most beneficial things. And that is the key moment where enabling appears. A lot of people keep enabling kids into just continue being this selfish creature, right? Continue to enable this person in development, that they are the center of attention, that everybody has to comply to them, that what they want is what it should be, and that reality has to bend to them, and that they just don't have to work. They don't have to learn. They don't have to learn the needs of others. They don't have to comply with the rules of others. They don't have to comply with their reality, with their facts, with their situation, that everything is just them, and what they want. If you keep feeding this little person in development the idea that rules and reality has to bend for them, they're not gonna make an effort to think otherwise. They might. Some freaks of nature out there, some really, really, really rare cases might, but usually not. It takes energy and it takes effort to do that. So us people tend to not try things that cost too much effort. It's a natural instinct, but so they're not gonna do it. They're gonna keep growing like that, trying to bend things in their will. At first, the first people you interact with, it's usually your parents, and then you start growing up, and you start to step outside of that little circle, and you start to meet people, other family, friends, schoolmates, teachers, and that behavior starts to transfer to those scenarios now, and the cycle just keeps growing and growing and growing. And you can already see how you end up having somebody like Cyrax. And I'm not going to talk about Daniel Larson here too much because he just grosses me up too much. He just annoys me and grosses me up, creeps me out too much to start to be willing to dig around him a little bit. You might say, come on, it's not worse than Cyrax. The thing is that Daniel Larson gets way too many enablers, unlike Cyrax, and it irritates me too much. Cyrax is worse, but he just gets so beat up every single time. People don't cut him a break, so it's a little bit more satisfying than Daniel Larson. He gets way too many people just like spoon feeding him things, just enabling him. He has way too many enablers. So that's another story. But I'm gonna use Cyrex and all those other cases, and even Christian, and you can go on and on and on. And you have politicians, you have business owners, you have family members that you might have that you might be like next room to you right now. You can tell how everybody grew up, especially those kind of people. You can tell how they grew up by the way they act as adults. It remains the same. That behavior remains the same, and it's very evident here with Cyrex and Sally because you have the dynamic right there. Still, mother and son, even though they're not really mother and son, they're grandma and grandson, but they still have, you can still see that dynamic right there where Sally keeps enabling him into doing all those things that I was talking about earlier.
The person realized that your son has made like a lot of very questionable decisions and actions, some of them involving children. I guess they just saw him for who he is, or at least how he portrays himself as. I know it's a difficult thing to hear that your, grandson is a monster, but that's just their opinion. He's not a pedophile. Okay, well, it seems that the cool Xbox guy had a change of heart on that one. I know you don't pay attention to all this stuff, but like there's a lot of things that he's done that would indicate a lot of people to believe that he is. And it might be uncomfortable to hear, but I don't know. If you send your penis to what you think is a 14-year-old girl, I would say that you are definitely on that spectrum, if not.
Well, he's never been listed as a pedophile. He doesn't have any charges against him. If all that was for real, then somebody would be calling the cops and having him arrested.
Well, yeah. I guess in Ohio, there's no statute unless there's an actual victim. Like they don't do these types of sting operations, and that's how it works. He's done all sorts of weird stuff too recently. Like he sent, and it was an adult woman, or at least what he thought was an adult woman, like a video of himself like eating his own semen and doing like all types of nasty, terrible stuff. I can like there's videos of it. He puts it out there, and it's really weird.
I've already seen it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think it is what you guys think it is.
What do you mean?
I just don't think it is what you guys think it is.
So it's like fake semen, or
something along that line.
Okay, so it's like sleight of hand. Probably. Okay, well, all right. Yeah, I don't know. Like he does a whole bunch of like sexually deviant stuff, and the guy just decided that he didn't want to support a sexual deviant and alleged pedophile, and he got his package rerouted. He made that determination on his own. I guess he like shoved the stylus up his behind. Like it's all.
I don't know what he does up there, and other than when you guys get him riled up, I don't hear from him except dinner, and that's it.
Like he screams the N-word at people over and over and over again, and people. And
I know. I've tried to talk to him about it, but he doesn't listen. So.
You ever just feel like throwing your hands up with him? Like I can only imagine. Like I don't have to live with him. It's nice being able to turn him on and turn him off when I please, but you have to.
People say a lot of things. People say that, oh, Sally must hate Cyrex, she can't stand them. She's probably so fed up with him. She probably can't stand to even be in the same house with him. Might be true to an extent, but no, I promise you, I fucking promise you, Sally loves Cyrex. Like, no fucking, Sally loves Cyrex. You can be absolutely fed up with somebody and secretly hate somebody, but still, she loves Cyrex. She loves her little kid. Just look at his name. You can tell. Look at his name. Chance. We know his story. He was premature. You can tell that they named him Chance because there was very little chance of him surviving, He was probably like their little miracle, He made it. They probably used to take care. They probably used to take a lot of care of him. I know that. I mean, his family dynamic, like a lot of families, like you see cases like that a lot, where yeah, they might be lousy parents, and they might be this and that. It's just like shitty family, and they might mistreat you in some cases, but still, that instinctive paternal maternal instinct must have been there, and they took care of him. He must have been really, really overprotected and spoiled as a kid. He was their little fragile, delicate kid, little brat. You can already tell he was a little brat, and they allowed him. They enabled him to keep being a little brat. I don't know about his real mom, but you can tell that Sally. Grandparents tend to take care a lot of their grandkids, even more than the care that they took for their own children. Grandparents tend to be even more instinctive about their grandchildren. And you can tell that Sally really used to take care of them. And she really loved them, like for real. And like a lot of grandparents, she would comply, and Cyrex would just rax out and do a tantrum and scream and be a little snotty little brat, and she would just comply. She would justify, she would do this and that, and she would comply, and you still see it nowadays. People say, oh, she's just like bearing him because of the disability check or the welfare thing that I think he's receiving or something. Yeah, sure, I mean, there's probably part of that, but still, deep inside, she still holds a lot of love for her little Raxo Worm-tongued Wilkins orc. Worm-tongued Wilkins lies, and she chooses to believe. Her little orc does orky things. He's a perv, he's this, he does that, he's violent. He attacks her, and she forgives. He does something, you present her with the facts, and she denies it and chooses to bend over to whatever complies to Cyrex. She's very enabling, and it all stems from when he was a little kid. Sally here has this very typical behavior that you see a lot in people. It's very toxic, and it's also learned from generations and generations and generations ago of being submissive and mediocre, because it's easier that way instead of struggling to strive for something better, to put discipline, and to also put your feet in the ground and demand your own place. To put your foot down and say, no, this is not allowed, that is more difficult. So a lot of people learn to just give in. And that mixed with this other mindset that you see a lot of his people in this family totally have, this very hillbilly, like rednecky. There's like, oh yeah, I'll never back down. This is my territory. You know? America, yeah. We always think of that stereotype of like, America, yeah. But it's all, you have that in every country. In Mexico, they're called buchones. Same thing, same attitude, same vibes, same style, same taste with tacos. That's the only difference. But it's really ingrained in his mind. He must have gotten it somewhere. The only things he was in contact with was mainly his family, his parents, probably his dad. You can totally see his dad was like that. His dad was also a piece of shit. His dad also went to jail. His dad also was a pedophile. He was also an asshole. And he must have had this really ingrained idea of like, I will never back down. It's always my way. And nasty things that he says to people, sit down, shut up, you little boy, little retard. My throat is really dry right now. I can't do a good Cyrex. But all those nasty things that he says to people whenever he's arguing with them are the things that they told him. He's projecting them. He's using the only insults he knows because they were told to him. And it's the only way he knows how to demand authority, by doing the things that were done to him. Most likely, by a lot of people, most likely, especially by his daddy old papa. And you You have Cyrax, who probably never even understood as a kid, but he knew that idea. He got that idea that I never back down. And he never backs down no matter if it's absolutely wrong and if it's something even captured on camera and you totally saw it and everybody saw it live and it happens a certain way and you present it and he still changes reality in his mind and he believes it. And he doubles down and yells and freaks out. And Sally Akron there comes down and bends the knee and just enables her little worm tongue Wilkins, her this deceitful worm tongue Wilkins, who is clearly lying, and she doesn't care. She doesn't have the guts to do any better than that. So instead of correcting him and disciplining him, she just gives in and convinces herself that her little worm tongue Wilkins has to be right. He can't be lying. He has an excuse and blah blah blah, and she enables him. That little glitched out NPC from the beginning, you can tell she didn't grow up with any good example. Anybody putting a stop to the bratty delusions of her just doing whatever you want because you just want it and that's it. And look at what happened. Common traits of lolcow people. Sexual deviation. It's pretty much a norm. Some kind of sexual deviation. Even asexual. It's kind of a sexual deviation. But sexual deviation, even when I put it all together in my mind, when I was thinking about this, I was like, wow, I never really thought about that shit. But there you go. It's a rabbit hole on its own, but I think it needs an entire video just for that. But yeah, when you're growing up, you're learning patterns, you're learning yourself, learning everybody else, you're learning your difference from you being a boy or a girl, and the difference of other people who are different from you. And you are learning, and you can see how you can pretty much start to imagine how it works out. You're learning, it's awkward, it's difficult, it's challenging, and then you start growing and hormones start to appear. Yeah, again, but it's a whole other rabbit hole. Denial of reality. No matter what you put in front of that person, what kind of fact, what kind of undeniable fact you put in front of that person, they're always proclaiming these ludicrous things that are very easily disputable. Their immaturity and delusion makes them easily believe these spoon-fed ideas that are wrong, these misguided spoon-fed ideas that are absolutely far-fetched and unrealistic. And immature, very important, immature, and they'll defend it. Immature people tend to have a lot of vanity, so vanity prevents you from admitting your own mistakes, so they double down. They are constantly making an ass out of themselves, doing reproachable, embarrassing things, immature, insufferable stuff, living in a cloud of toxicity, negative, misinformed, misguided ideas, and as I said, toxic ideals, but they're really comfortable there because they inhabit a social bubble that is constantly being injected with resources and political and social enabling that in turn enables them, keeping this machine, this quote-unquote lolcow factory going. And it's a really pitiful existence living in that bubble because you feel so comfortable because it's socially acceptable by force, but it's socially acceptable, so you think that is good. You end up believing it's a good thing to inhabit that bubble. Sad thing is that you're a nuisance to everybody. You're dead weight. You're a problem for normal people who just need to get by. Normal people that end up paying for your broken dishes, that end up fixing the problems that you make, that end up maintaining you because the resources that you need to sustain yourself come from them, while you're just running around smugly proclaiming superiority, moral superiority, and being and acting embarrassing. and childish in true lolcow nature. They say it's easier to make a person fall deeper into a lie than to convince them that they've been lied to. And that has a lot to do with vanity, and vanity is selfish. I made a whole video about the difference between vanity and ego, and the thing that people call ego is not really ego, it's vanity, and vanity is bad, ego is good. Anyways, it has a lot to do with vanity, and vanity is self-centered and selfish, childish, immature. You can go back to the thing that I was talking about earlier. When you are in that immature state, you are as you were when you were a little kid, and things had to bend to your needs, your own will, and you didn't really need it to make an effort to learn otherwise. And later on, when you're a grown up, you've already too invested in that, and you have learned that pattern way too much. The more time it passes, the most difficult it becomes to relearn everything again and to change that manner that you have. As when you were growing up, you were supposed to have learned already to cope with things and to deal with things, to keep advancing to the next step in life, to the next mindsets, more developed mindsets. And instead you stayed stuck in something from your childhood. So you have a big problem. It's a big problem to solve, so you don't want to do it. Another point, bad temper. It all has to do with the things that I said previously, especially the past point. You have a bad temper because you don't know how to deal with your own character, with your own emotions, because it all has to do with the things that I said previously. You never learned how to behave and how to mature and how to deal with things. You don't know how to, so you just explode. Like if you were a little kid, because kids don't know how to deal with those things. They don't know how to control their emotions, their thoughts, challenges, because they haven't learned yet. So they explode. People who explode very easily, emotionally, are immature, are very infantile. And you see that a lot nowadays. Just look on the internet. You see that a lot. Just people being very infantilized, exploding, not knowing how to deal with things, just needing a system, somebody bigger, some kind of, I don't know, some kind of deity, some kind of like greater form of power coming to solve their problems. That's very convenient for that power solving their problems, because that power has them depending on it, so it has ownership over them. You see why this is happening? And you can enable enough people to become a lolcow out there, here and there, to a point where they make a social group, right? Some kind of group that is like bigger, right? And you have this little bigger group of little lolcows here behaving erratically and not being able to think critically and to really fend for themselves, right? And to just be like dependent, right? And you can call that group whatever, something. And now you have a social group that is dependent on you as a hierarchy to fend for them, right? And if somebody else starts to criticize them, then you can just the group of lolcows can just scream out loud and be like, "Hey, help me! I'm being attacked. I'm being harassed," or whatever. And you can just claim that you are being something here. You are lolcow-phobic now. You're problematic. You're a conspiracy theorist now. You're lolcowcist. You need to go away now. You need to go home. And matter of fact, you can't have a home anymore. Get out of here. I need to destroy you. Very clever. Very clever. You have power now. You have a group of people that you can control because they depend on you, and they're not gonna complain, at least not for now. And if they do, you can just take away everything from them, and they're not gonna have a choice. And using that group of lolcows, You can destroy dissidents, anybody who doesn't comply. That's ingenious. And by defending the locales that you created, you're not the villain, you're the hero. Wow. And you can just claim to you can do whatever, and you can eradicate that group of people that were criticizing the locales for being clearly locales. Isn't that curious? Antisocial behavior, loneliness, something very prevalent nowadays again, and pretty much stems from everything that I just said. If you start mixing the things, the points that I previously said, you start to fend people off. You start to repel people away from you. And since you never learned how to deal with things, you never learned how to know social cues, the needs of other people. You never really learn how to empathize with others and to socialize and work together with others and understand others, understand their needs. And there are rules because you were enabled not to. Because when you were growing up, you didn't really need to. And when you start developing, you don't want to because it becomes more and more and more challenging. You tend to become a loner. And I know that there's people that are just loners no matter what. You might say, well, I'm not like that. I was raised very well, and I know I'm not. I don't have any of the traits of locals or anything like that, and I'm still a loner, and that's true. You can't be a loner just simply because you're naturally introspective and shy, and you can't be somebody who still has a lot of confidence and still knows how to work with everybody else by yourself. That's different. Somebody who gets along very well with everybody else and knows how to work very well alongside other people by yourself, even from the distance. That's one thing. Another thing is just to be a bitter, clueless, pathetic loser who doesn't know anything, doesn't want to know anything, and it's just rotting somewhere waiting for its retribution. That's the difference. If you see that people don't know how to work with you, people don't really know how to be with you, but you know how to be with them, and you know how to work with them and to just be with them, then you're just a natural loner. You're just a natural lone wolf. But if you don't know how to be with anybody, you don't know how to work with anybody, and nobody knows how to deal with you, then you're just a loser. You're just a bratty little loser. And with that, I think I'm gonna end it. There's way more points, like more signs of a locale, more examples, but I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Conclusion. Okay, to summarize everything, just to finally end up the video. This is long. Oh my god. Oof. Is anybody listening to this point? I can't imagine. I've never made something this long. People, who would stay this long? Anyways, summarize quickly. Wait. Sexual deviation. Oh yeah. I'm still like, what the fuck? I'm still mind boggled. I just discovered that while making this video. I never thought about that before, but it's always the same. All of this current climate, it's all about sexual deviation, which is very curious because your sexuality is the core thing that defines your identity, is the most primal, basic thing. The main thing that defines your identity is your sexuality. And current social political climate right now is all about deconstructing your identity and rebuilding it as something new, something more manageable for future political standards. And a lot of the people that you see defending these types of agendas share a lot of the traits of locals, if not all of them. And the typical locals that you see are sort of the side effects, right? The collateral damage of all of these agendas. Again, this is a whole other rabbit hole, again, entirely, that needs to be explored by itself. And it's, wow. Did you ever imagine this being part of the whole thing? I didn't, until right now. Moving on, hurry, this is fucking long enough. What was? immaturity, delusion, and what else? Uh, Social disruption. I'm not gonna say it antisocial behavior because it's more like antisocial behavior. It's a part of social disruption. Social disruption is wider. Social disruption is something that they do, for example, in cults. One of the first things they need to do to make you fall part of a cult is to take you apart from society, your family, your friends, everybody, to make you into, to single you out from everybody else, from everything else, to make you be alone. And this climate right now is all about making you be alone, apart from everybody else, singled out. And very importantly, they have a strong will to bend reality to their demands, their will. And my dog is scratching himself, and I think you can hear him. And it's scary. It's low cow thing, and it's everywhere, and it's happening too much. And I'm gonna leave it here. Bye.